Collins Avenue runs the entire length of Miami Beach, and appropriately enough, it was named after pioneer developer John Collins.
At the very busy intersection of Collins and 10th Street, right in front of the Essex House. You know, Paul, all of these buildings say Miami Beach to me. It is like there is a concentration of our architectural heritage within these few blocks.
You're absolutely correct, Hunter. In fact, let's take a look at this location on the map. Here we are at 10th and Collins. All around us are these magnificent examples of 30s architecture we'll take a look at. This whole south end of Miami Beach has been designated the Art Deco National Historic District for about the past 20 years. Then we'll walk over to 10th and Washington and stop in at the Wilsonian Museum to take a look at the frozen fountain to see how it all ties in.
Well, we're now entering the charming lobby of the Essex Hotel. Look at this amazing mural.
There's a great story behind this mural. This hotel was built in 1938, and as they were completing construction, they brought in this great muralist, Earl Upon. And he did this great mural. It's an Everglades wildlife scene. Absolutely. Dugout canoe, probably made out of a cypress tree. And let's go fast forward now. 50 years later, this hotel is down on its heels when 3 historic preservationists buy it. And they begin to restore it. And one of them, Patricia Murphy, says, I wonder if this mural is still around. She finds him up in Dania. He's now in his 80s. She brings him down, he touches up the mural, and he adds an alligator over here in the corner to the scene. And she logically says, well, why didn't you have the alligator in originally? He says it would have scared the tourists too much, so he left it out until then.
Well, let's take a few steps back. There are several different architectural styles. How many here on the beach?
4 dominant styles. There's Art Deco, sometimes called Streamline Moderne. There's Mediterranean Revival, and both of those will be found in this area, in this district. And then, of course, there's Miami Modern up around the Fontainebleau and the Eden Rock. And then the last style will be the contemporary style of architecture.
With all this boom going on, you said that the Depression didn't hit the beach too badly as it did the rest of the country.
The beach fared better than most other areas because there was a surge of tourists in the second half of the 1930s, which led to the creation of hundreds of new apartments and hotels and even houses on the beach.
Now let's take a look. I see you got a great photo of the Essex Hotel in the 40s.
Yeah, look at the detail here. This was done by Henry Hohauser, a great architect. The rounded contours, the finial spire, the vitro light. This is just black glass ornamental, the eyebrows, the vertical lines, the horizontal lines. It's got it all. It's got it all.
And terrazzo floors?
Terrazzo floors and etched glass and, you know, what have you. Most of the Art Deco hotels and apartments were built between 1936 and 1941. And there are several beautiful jewels as examples of these. For example, let's take a look at the National Hotel. It was designed by Roy France in 1940 and constructed that year. In terms of influences behind this design, this Art Deco or streamlined style, the most important influence is that of the sleek machines of the 30s, the trains, the airplanes, the ships, and of course the automobiles of the 30s. And these hotels parody that, the rounded contours, the racing stripes, that aerodynamic look. You'll find that within these hotels themselves. Now there's many examples of these great Art Deco hotels. The Essex House, the Cardozo, also designed by Henry Hohauser, and the names just go on and on in terms of
Tides. I've always enjoyed the
Tides. Another jewel of a hotel too, and they all have these various characteristics that we've talked about, from eyebrows to terrazzo floors, to parapets, to finial spires, to portholes. So again, they're parodying these machines of that era.
Well, just looking at all those images makes you imagine just what it must have been like living at that time.
It had to have been a fabulous era. The big band era, we're on the eve of World War II, the beautiful subtropical background here. It was a fabulous place. You know, in fact, there were over 800 buildings built between 1936 and 41 in what is today's Art Deco district. And nobody really thought much about their design until recent times. In 1976, something called the Miami Design Preservation League was organized, and that league set out and surveyed a proposed district, and they turned their findings into the National Park Service, which in 1979 anointed this as a National Historic District. And it began to be recognized at that point. It's about a square mile in size, and every January there's an Art Deco weekend that celebrates
I've
this
attended
style.
many.
That's great. It's great.
Now, we haven't yet touched on the Mediterranean Revival. Doesn't the Wolfsonian Museum represent that style?
It does. It was built in 1927 and has many of those characters. In fact, let's go down and take a look at that.
Okay. Paul, you were telling me on the way over that the Wolfsonian Museum is a good example of Mediterranean revival.
It is, especially the frieze above the entranceway. It really replicates that of a building at the University of Salamanca in Spain.
What are some of the other characteristics we might find?
Well, typically you find in this style balconies, arched entranceways, barrel tile roofs, beautiful courtyards, textured stucco to make it look real old.
And what are some examples here on the beach?
Well, the Alamac Hotel would be a good example.
Why don't we go in and see what makes the Wolfsonian so unique?
Sounds good to me. See the window grill back here, and of course the frozen fountain in fact.
Now this building houses the Wolfsonian collection, but tell me a little bit about the Wolfsons.
Well, Mitchell Wolfson, the patriarch of the family, was a great entrepreneur and a civic leader. He served many years in the politics of Miami Beach, but more importantly perhaps, he was the founder of the Womeco chain of movie theaters and the first television station in Florida, WTVJ Channel 4, which began operating in 1949.
And what was this building at the time?
This building was designed and built in 1927 as the Washington Storage Company building. People who came down from the north to winter here would sometimes leave stuff behind. Guys in trucks looking like milkmen would go pick up sofas and radios and what have you, and lamps and bring them here. Even cars sometimes were placed here and deposited until these people came back the next winter. They'd take them out of storage and put them to work again. Even Al Capone's safe at one point was stored in this building.
Well, it's not a storage facility anymore except for beautiful pieces of art. Tell me about this elaborate frozen fountain.
Well, this wonderful frozen fountain was influenced by the design that came out of a Paris exposition, the Artist de Courtis exposition in 1925. And something similar to this was on exhibit there. It really inspired and influenced a whole bunch of designers in the United States and elsewhere in the Western world to design what we call frozen fountains and window grills. This stood above a movie theater in Norristown, Pennsylvania that was built in the late 1920s. This was designed in 1929. It sat atop the theater marquee. And it was there for many decades. Well, in the early 1980s, the theater closed. They were going to level it. Mickey Wolfson, who has amassed this great collection in this building, the Wolfsonian collection, learned about that, purchased this frozen fountain, brought it.
Next time on New Florida, we'll take a stroll along Espanola Way and discover the history of this early artist colony.